It's the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Welcome in, everybody. Kendall Smith and Wes Mitchell joining you here on this lovely Thursday. We hope that you're all doing well. Wes, how are you?
I'm good. The sun is shining. My birthday's next week. And we got South Carolina versus Clemson baseball this week. So I'm good. We've got fake spring in Columbia right now, so I'm happy.
Don't say it's fake spring. Let's go ahead and try to speak some positivity into the world here. Maybe this warm weather will
No.
last. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're right. It always happens that way. It's like fake winter, fake spring, real spring. You get a little back and forth action both in North Carolina and South Carolina. We're experiencing that right now in Charlotte too. So glad the weather is nice, at least for now. And happy early birthday. By the way, everybody wish Wes a happy birthday. He's turning 45 years old. No, I'm kidding. We won't share his age on here, but he's not turning 45. We will say that.
I'm not in the 40s yet. So
We'll celebrate accordingly for sure. Next week, give you a big birthday shout out here on GC. But today, we're talking all about recruiting, and we've got a lot to get to. Every week, we have a lot to get to. We always say this. There's always so much going on. And at the top of this week, actually, some pretty big news. On3 released the On 300 list. So it's the top 300 players in the class of 2026. And South Carolina saw some adjustments, some changes in some of the guys they've been recruiting, some of the guys that are committed. And I think really the one that stands out is Peyton Dyer. He's a commit cornerback from Georgia in the class of 2026. He jumped up actually on this list to not being on the list to being on the list and going from a 3-star to a 4-star. Wes, why was he able to make such a big jump? Because that is genuinely impressive.
yeah, no. So Peyton's a guy South Carolina's been high on. Obviously, they accepted a commitment from him, but was a little bit more under the radar at the time of that commitment. And since then, I think the word has gotten out on him a little bit more. This is one of the guys I watched at that Atlanta camp that I was at a few weeks ago. And that's typically one of your most talented camps in the country. You've got a lot of the guys from all over the Southeast that are there. And I thought he really held his own against some of the best receivers in Georgia. He's a big kid. He's already 6'1", 190. He can move. He has great ball skills. And Cody Belair, who's one of the On3 recruiting rankings assistants, he just has been very, very impressed with his overall athleticism. Like I said, the ball skills. This is someone who broke up 12 passes this past season, which is a pretty high number in high school, especially when your best corners are not going to be maybe challenged that much by athletes across the way from them. And I think as a kid who just has kind of started to come into his own, good footwork, good patience at that position. And I think just fits, we talk about Torian Gray, what he looks for in cornerbacks, that kind of lengthy, 6'1", 190 size, athleticism combination where he feels like he can take kind of that skill set and then mold it into exactly what he's looking for at that position. So this is definitely a guy who fits his mold, and I think will be a really good player at South Carolina if they can hold on to him, because there has been a ton of interest from other schools. Georgia heavily involved here, Southern Cal heavily involved here. So with his sort of rise on the recruiting radar, you're also seeing more and more attention from other schools trying to flip him from South Carolina, Kendall.
Yeah, as you and I both certainly know, even though someone is committed verbally to a school, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the school they will end up at. The recruiting journey doesn't end there. South Carolina still has to continue to show Dyer that they want him to be a Gamecock. And I think South Carolina has done such a good job of finding some of these guys that are a little bit more under the radar. We've seen it in past classes for sure. And a name that certainly comes to mind is Nick Eamon-Worry, a guy that wasn't recruited super heavily. He comes to South Carolina. Everybody knows the story from there. So kind of another situation like this, but now Dyer really starting to get some of that notice, and I think rightfully so, making a big jump there on the On 300 list. He wasn't even on it, and again, now he is on it, and he's bumped up from a 3-star to a 4-star. A couple other notable things that we should talk about from this On 300 list. A good amount of guys from the state of South Carolina getting some love and getting some recognition on this list. What were the major changes, Wes, that you saw in terms of where players were listed on this On 300 rankings from where they were?
Yeah, there's 3 guys that I think are worth mentioning from the Palmetto State, and all 3 are also South Carolina targets, Kendall. Zion Giles from Carver's Bay. He's an offensive lineman. He's been a priority target for South Carolina, for Clemson as well. I kind of think the Gamecocks are in a good spot there, but we'll certainly see how it plays out. He's moved up to the number 40 prospect overall in the country and is currently number 1 in the state of South Carolina in those on 3 rankings. So Jazavion Currents, the South Carolina commitment from South Point, he's kind of been the guy that I would say paced everybody as the number 1 prospect in the state of South Carolina. But now he's got a little bit of company, I would say, and that's going to be something that's ongoing. So right now in the on 3 industry ranking, which is kind of the one that averages everybody together, it's still Currents. In the on 3 ranking, which is sort of separated out just by the rankings guys here at on 3, it is now Zion Giles. So I think there'll be an ongoing competition there for that number 1 spot. Somebody else who is all of a sudden in that conversation is Contavious Anderson from Dorman. He's now the number 75 overall prospect in the country, 4-star safety. Once again, Gamecocks, Clemson battling there. You've got a couple of true South Carolina versus Clemson battles that I think are going to be very interesting to watch. I would say maybe Carolina and Clemson end up splitting those two, but I think it's going to be pretty tight with both of them. And then the number 4 prospect in the country now, or excuse me, in South Carolina now, is somebody who is very intriguing to South Carolina fans. This is a little bit of a new name on the radar, but not a new name to South Carolina. That is Julian Walker. His dad is actually on South Carolina's strength staff. He is just such a physically impressive kid. And I've had a chance to start to get to know him a little bit. Appears to be a great kid as well. But really, if you talk about that just exact prototype you're looking for in terms of like an edge guy, a defensive end, he's already listed at 6'6", 230 pounds as someone who's, midway through their junior year in high school. So just physically imposing, physically impressive prospect, and really started to come into his own on the football field this past season, to where all that size and athleticism kind of started to translate and convert to on-field production. And so I've got a feeling more teams that see this kid, it's going to be almost instant offer, just because he is just that impressive physically of a prospect. And so South Carolina does have a built-in advantage there, in that he is incredibly familiar with the program. Obviously, with his dad being a strength coach, his dad was on the staff at Georgia when Beamer was there as well. So that's where there's an original connection. His dad was also the head strength coach at Arkansas before he came to USC. So somebody to keep an eye on moving forward. I don't know if I said it earlier, but he's at Dutch Fork High School, so right down the road here locally, and somebody to keep an eye on. So those are 3 guys. Julian didn't have a ranking before this latest update, and this latest update was probably one of your most expansive, biggest updates you're going to see. I think I read 56 new guys in the on 300. So this is where they're gathering all that data. You got to think, how many kids play high school football? There's like 10,000 or something like that. So you're constantly trying to figure out who should be on the radar to be a top 300 type player. And typically, if you're among the top 300, that means you're automatically going to be a 4-star guy. And so lots of movement within the rankings. And Julian would have been one of the ones who made probably one of the biggest jumps in the entire country overall. So a guy to keep an eye on moving forward, Kendall, if you're a South Carolina fan, but also maybe a little bit on the national level. He is, number 134 overall in the country. So a little bit outside of that top 100, but I think would have a chance potentially with a big offseason and big senior year to move into the top 100.
Well, there you go, Wes. Appreciate it. That was very in-depth, and I think what everybody is interested in hearing, right? We've seen the way that South Carolina has been able to recruit from an in-state standpoint, and you obviously hope that that trend continues into this 2026 class and beyond, and certainly a lot of very talented players, as you just mentioned, in the 2026 class from the Palmetto State. The On 300 list, it's out now. We've got more information on this over on GamecockCentral.com, so be sure to go and check that out. Just more in-depth analysis. You can read a little bit more about how this list is created, etc. it's definitely, like Wes said, very expansive. So much work and effort goes into the process of creating a list like this and being able to curate those top 300 guys in the 2026 class. So go check it out over on GamecockCentral.com. Wes, appreciate you as always and all the insight that you provide here on the recruiting rundown. And we appreciate all of you so much for joining us here on the show. We hope you have an amazing rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and a wonderful weekend. So for Wes Mitchell, I am Kendall Smith. This has been the Recruiting Rundown here on Gamecock Central. We will see you soon.